my name is Carrie Petty. I'm a dressage rider, a Pilates instructor, and a USEF dressage judge. While we're sheltering, I have a little bit more time, and I've always wanted to do a series on applying Pilates and the basic exercises that you see done in a Pilates class and how they relate specifically to your riding and how they relate specifically to dressage movements. The first 5 videos that I'm doing, though, are working on the basics of Pilates. So the first one was on neutral spine and finding your deep abdominal muscles in the pelvis. The second one was on breathing. And now this is on your rib placement, which is super important in your riding as well as being super important in your posture and in your everyday life. So if you think about the parts of the body as being building blocks, you want to work on your posture and your riding balance from your pelvis up and your pelvis down. A lot of people try to start through the head and neck. So the second building block is your rib cage. So that the rib cage is centered over your pelvis. So in a neutral spine position, the normal curves of the spine, that would be where it is. Now, if you think about people in the general public and in horseback riding, you see people where the rib cage gets sunken back, specifically at the sternum that they're kind of sunk in from. Some people in riding, when they do that, then you're behind the center of balance, so they end up gripping with their legs. It could even bring their legs up so they're in a chair seat. Some people, you could have some issues with a curved back. And so with those, we'll just understand that maybe that's an issue that possibly you can improve a bony structure, but we can still sort to improve the core. So in this position, when you're rounded, you are behind your sit bone. So you're behind the movement of the horse. So what you're telling the horse to do from your seat is not exactly what you want to be telling him. So he has to kind of guess. When you're behind the motion, you're also a little bit of a drag on the horse. So the horse is constantly having an emergency brake on his mouth. Okay, so we're going to come back to the neutral, thinking about where the rib cage is. Now there's a whole lot more people, they feel like 90% of the population has a posture where they're more forward. Now whether or not it's that from working at a desk, again, it puts you at the kind of extreme range of motion here. So too much of a round back, too much of an arch back. This creates a lot of problems in people's low back. It puts a lot of stress here because it tips the weight forward. People usually flare at their sternum right here. To me, this is you're leaking your weight from your core because the top of the deep ab muscle is here. So a lot of times what I tell people to do is try to connect the rib cage together. Here, when you do that, it helps to bring the rib cage back over the pelvis. So, rib cage placement. Another thing that we can do is rib cage mobilization. So, I am trying to keep the hips fairly still, the shoulders fairly still, and see if I can move the rib cage to one side and the other. Now, I'm right-handed. I'm much stiffer on my right side. If you played a sport for a long period of time that demands things on one side, if you're right side dominant and don't realize how much you use your right side, you can notice that my ribs barely move this way and they move a lot more that way. And unfortunately, most of us have a tendency to just go to the side that feels really good. Right, so doing the ribcage mobilization, you can do this on the mat too. Remember I said so many of the Pilates exercises are on the mat so you can feel things. So now I'm lying down on my back and I can see if I can slide my ribs over to the right, come back to the center position, slide my ribs over to the left, come back to that neutral position. Now as you do it, you could practice that breathing. Inhale, I'm center. Exhale, remember, was a little bit of flexion, and we actually are flexing the ribs. Inhale, I come back straight, and then exhale, I'm moving those ribs to the other side. Inhale, center. Exhale, trying to move the ribs to the side. Inhale, center, and then exhale, moving the ribs. Right. Another exercise with your legs straight out in front of you to try to get that feel of closing the ribs down and together if you have a tendency to be a rib popper. So inhale here, and then exhale with my fingertips here on my rib cage. I'm going to exhale and try to draw the ribs down and in together. When I do that, my fingers actually come closer together. I'm going to go into a little bit of flexion. So this is a version of spine stretch forward prep, and then coming back tall through your spine. So again, I'm not behind my sit bones. My ribs actually go backwards when I do that. Inhale here. Now I actually have room to allow my rib cage to expand in my breathing as I go forward. And then inhale back up. And again, I'm not forward, thrusting my chest forward. This could be in posting that you have this problem too. And then inhale, coming back. So if you do, post in your writing, some people will have a tendency to kind of lead from their chest. And then when they get to the top of the rise, they end up pushing forward from their chest. Remember that in your posting, you're trying to extend your hips, not lead with your sternum. When you lead with your sternum, you notice you can't extend your hips all the way. So again, that's why where the ribs are, so you keep the ribs connected as you bring yourself up and forward. That's going to help your balance too. This is a good exercise to do to try to notice what your tendency is. Once you notice what your tendency is, you can fix it. So if you feel like I'm going to go this way and immediately you go here, so you've overarched your back, you've lost neutral, you're flaring through your ribs. So inhale to prepare, pull up on your pelvic floor. Okay. Exhale, you're going to start to extend the hips, so the movement here, keeping the rib cage connected, and then slowly coming back down. Another exercise to see what your tendency is if you're here with the rib cage, and I start to hinge back. When I hinge back, I'm trying to keep my hips open. If you have a tendency to let go here, then you're probably a little bit of a rib popper. So I'm trying to allow that connection through my rib cage as I stretch back, and then inhale, come back tall through your spine. Again, find that hinge back, keeping the ribs connected, not letting them pop, and then slowly coming back. Good. You can have your arms out in front of you. You can even pretend you're holding onto reins. Good. And then come back tall through your spine. So remember, with your ribs, you're moving your weight. When your ribs move, your weight moves. The horse wants your weight in your pelvis. You want your weight in your pelvis because your seat is closer to the horse and you can give him better direction. So if your ribs move off to one side too, the horse is trying to figure out, do you want him here or do you want him here? My ribs go to the side, my opposite seat bone usually floats, and so again, you're not giving the horse the direction that you think you're getting. So rib cage placement is super important. The next thing that we're going to work on, the fourth principle, is working on your shoulders, your shoulder stabilization. So I hope you can join me for that too. So that's Carrie Petty, dressage rider, inviting you to improve your riding and your horse by starting your Pilates principles today. Thank you.